The wolves came to her when they had nowhere else to go. And Seren, the woman the pack had cast out for being born without a wolf of her own, never turned a single one away. It started with a lone pup, half-starved and trembling, deposited at her doorstep by a silver she-wolf who vanished into the mist before dawn. Then another came, and another. Soon the wolves of Valthorn were bringing her every orphan, every abandoned cub, every creature the pack deemed too weak to survive. "She is wolfless," the elders had declared when she came of age without shifting. "Incomplete, unworthy of pack." But the wolves disagreed. They came to her in the night, pressing their muzzles against her palms, curling around her fire, trusting her with their most vulnerable. Seren didn't understand why. She only knew she couldn't refuse them. Then the Alpha King arrived, Calder of Valthorn, beautiful and brutal. A ruler whose own wolf had gone silent years ago. Some said dying, others said already dead. He walked past his generals, past his advisors, and stood in the doorway of her crumbling cottage, surveying the dozen sleeping pups scattered across her floor. "You'll come with me," he said. Not a question, not a request. Seren looked at the orphans curled at her feet, at this cold king whose wolf she could not sense no matter how hard she reached, and she understood. He wasn't here for her. He was here because his wolves had chosen her. And whatever impossible thing he was about to demand, she already knew her answer. She would not abandon them, not even for a king. Neither of them understood what that choice would cost. The cottage sat at the edge of everything. Past the last farmhouse, past the boundary stones, past the point where any respectable member of the Valthorn pack would venture. This was the land of the forgotten, and Seren had made it her home. She woke before dawn, as she always did, to the sound of whimpering. A new one. Seren pushed aside the threadbare blanket and stepped carefully over the sleeping bodies, paws and tails and soft bellies rising and falling in the dim light. 12 pups now, 12 mouths to feed, 12 lives depending on her, 12 reasons the pack elders would love to see her finally starve. The whimpering came from outside the door. She opened it to find a gray pup, barely weaned, shivering on the stone step. Its eyes were clouded with fever, its ribs sharp beneath matted fur. Behind it, already retreating into the tree line, was a massive black wolf she recognized as one of the border patrol. "Wait," Seren called, but the wolf was gone. She gathered the sick pup against her chest, feeling its heart flutter like a trapped bird. "Shh," she murmured. "You're safe now. You're safe." The pup's shivering eased. Its clouded eyes found hers, and something in its small body relaxed, surrendering to her warmth. This was the part no one understood, the part that had made her mother weep and her father turn his face away in shame. Seren couldn't shift. She had no wolf inside her, no beast to call upon, and no second form waiting beneath her skin. By every measure of her kind, she was broken, incomplete. But wolves trusted her. They always had. As a child, wild wolves would follow her through the forest, press against her legs, and let her bury her fingers in their fur. The pack had called it unnatural. Her father had called it a curse. And when she reached her 20th year without shifting, when it became clear that no wolf would ever rise inside her, they had cast her out entirely. "Wolfless women bring doom," Lord Heron had proclaimed at her exile. "Let her live among the beasts she loves so much. Let her die there." That had been 3 years ago. Seren hadn't died. Instead, she had built something. A refuge. A sanctuary for every creature the pack discarded. She carried the sick pup inside and set to work applying herbs and warmth. By the time the sun crested the eastern mountains, the pup's fever had broken. It slept now in a nest of blankets near the fire, surrounded by the others, already accepted into the strange little family Seren had gathered. She was grinding herbs for a poultice when she felt it. A presence. Massive. Approaching from the north. Seren's hands went still. She couldn't sense wolves the way true shifters could, couldn't feel the invisible threads of pack bonds that connected her kind. But she had learned to read the forest, to notice when the birds went silent, when the wind shifted, when something powerful moved through the trees. Something powerful was moving now. She stepped outside. The morning was gray and cold, mist curling between the pines. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the first rider emerged from the fog. Royal guards. 6 of them, in black leather and silver mail, their horses stamping nervously at the edge of her clearing. They fanned out in formation, creating a corridor. And through that corridor came the king. Seren had never seen Calder of Valthorn in person. She had only heard the stories. That he had killed his own brother to claim the throne. That his wolf had gone mad with grief and then gone silent. That he ruled with an iron fist and a frozen heart, feeling nothing, fearing nothing, needing no one. The stories had not mentioned that he was beautiful. He dismounted with fluid grace, and Seren's breath caught despite herself. He was tall, taller than any man she'd known, with black hair that fell past his collar and eyes the color of winter storms. His face was all sharp angles and elegant brutality, a face that could command armies, seduce kingdoms, and destroy lives without a flicker of remorse. But it was what she couldn't sense that made her blood run cold. Every wolf she had ever encountered she could feel, not through pack bonds, but through something deeper, something wordless, a warmth that reached from their beast to whatever broken thing lived inside her. She felt nothing from him. Where his wolf should have been, there was only silence. Cold. Empty. A void where a beast should live. "You are Seren," he said. His voice was low, controlled, utterly without warmth. The wolfless woman. She lifted her chin. The wind caught her copper hair, tangling it across her face, but she didn't look away. "I am." He studied her with those pale gray eyes, and Seren had the unnerving sense of being weighed, measured, found wanting. Behind him, his guards watched with barely concealed disgust. "My wolves come here," Calder said. It wasn't a question. "They bring me their pups," Seren replied. "The ones the pack won't raise. The ones that would die without care." "I'm aware." He stepped closer, and the cold radiating from him intensified. "I've been aware for some time. My border patrol reports to me. Every wolf that crosses into your territory, every pup left at your door." His jaw tightened. "They should not come to you. You are not pack. You are nothing." The words landed like blows, but Seren refused to flinch. "And yet they come." "Yes." Something flickered in his eyes, gone too quickly to name. "They do." He turned and surveyed her cottage, her garden, the small pen where 2 older pups were wrestling in the mud. His expression revealed nothing. "You will come with me to the capital," he said finally. Seren's heart stopped. "What?" "You'll be housed in the castle, given resources, staff, and proper facilities." He turned back to her, his gaze sharp. "The pups will come with you. All of them. You will oversee their care and raising under my authority." It made no sense. Kings did not visit wolfless outcasts. Kings did not care about orphaned pups. Kings certainly did not invite cursed women into their castles. "Why?" Seren demanded. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he said, "Because my wolves have chosen you, and I would very much like to know why." He stepped past her toward the cottage door, pausing at the threshold to look down at the sleeping pups inside. Something crossed his face, so brief she almost missed it. Longing. Raw and desperate and utterly at odds with everything else about him. Then it was gone, and his expression was stone once more. "You have 1 hour to gather your things," he said without turning. "My guards will assist with the pups." "And if I refuse?" Now he turned. Those winter eyes met hers, and Seren felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. "You won't," he said quietly. "Because refusing means abandoning them. And we both know you would rather die than do that." He walked into her cottage without permission, and Seren stood frozen in the doorway, heart pounding, mind racing. He knew. Somehow, impossibly, he knew the one thing that could compel her. And as she watched the Alpha King of Valthorn kneel beside a sleeping pup, reaching out with one careful hand to touch its fur, she saw it again. That flicker of longing. That desperate, hungry look. Like a man who had lost something precious and would burn the world to get it back. What have his wolves seen in me, she wondered, that their king cannot? And what will happen when he finds out? The journey to the capital took 3 days. Seren rode in a covered wagon with the pups, 14 now since 2 more had been brought to her cottage in the hour before departure. The guards had watched in disbelief as a pair of wild wolves emerged from the forest, each carrying a pup by the scruff, and deposited them at Seren's feet before vanishing. "This is unnatural," one guard had muttered. "This is exactly why she's coming," another had replied. The king rode at the head of the procession, never once looking back. Seren spent the journey caring for her charges. The sick gray pup from that morning, whom she had named Thistle, was recovering well. The 2 newest arrivals were siblings, a male and female with matching amber eyes, who refused to be separated for even a moment. She called them Bracken and Fern. Names helped. Names made them real, made them hers, made them something more than abandoned creatures no one wanted. "You are wanted," she told each of them silently. "You are mine." On the second night, they made camp beside a river. The guards erected tents with military precision, building fires and posting watches. Seren stayed in the wagon with the pups, unwilling to leave them alone in unfamiliar territory. She was settling Thistle into a nest of blankets when the wagon's canvas flap opened. The king stood there, silhouetted against the firelight. "Walk with me," he said. It wasn't a request. Seren hesitated, glancing at the sleeping pups. "They might wake. They're not used to—" "My guards will watch them." His tone brooked no argument. "Walk with me." She climbed down from the wagon, painfully aware of her worn clothes, her unwashed hair, the dirt beneath her fingernails. The king looked like he had stepped from a painting, immaculate in black, every hair in place. They walked in silence toward the river, the sound of rushing water filling the space between them. The moon was full, casting silver light across the current. "You've named them," Calder said finally. Seren blinked. "The pups?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because they're not things." She felt a flare of defensiveness. "They're not cargo or resources. They're children. They deserve names." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the water. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Softer. "What are their names?" Seren studied him, searching for mockery. She found none. "The gray one is Thistle," she said slowly. "The siblings are Bracken and Fern. The oldest is Rowan. He's nearly ready to shift on his own. The smallest is Moss. She was the first one brought to me, over a year ago now." She continued through the list. 14 names, 14 stories, 14 lives that mattered to her more than her own. The king listened without interruption. When she finished, he said, "You love them." "Of course I love them. Even though they're not yours. Even though you gained nothing by taking them in. Even though caring for them has made your life immeasurably harder." Seren frowned. "Love isn't transactional." Something shifted in his expression. That flicker again. That raw and desperate thing. "No," he said quietly. "It isn't." They stood in silence for a moment, the river rushing past, the moon watching from above. Then Calder spoke again. His voice returned to its usual controlled flatness. "When we reach the capital, you will be given quarters in the East Wing. A full staff, healers, resources, everything you need for the pups. You will answer only to me. And in return? In return, you will do exactly what you've been doing. Care for them, raise them, help them become what they're meant to be." It sounded too simple, too good. "There's more," Seren said. "There has to be." The king turned to face her fully, and in the moonlight she could see how pale he was, how the shadows beneath his eyes spoke of sleepless nights, how his hands trembled slightly. "You will not speak of what you sense in me," he said. "Or rather, what you don't sense." Seren's breath caught. "Your wolf is dying." The words fell like stones into still water. "Has been dying for 7 years. And until I understand why my wolves are drawn to you, until I know what you are and what you can do, you will tell no one." The weight of it pressed down on her. A king with a dying wolf. A kingdom that didn't know. A secret that could shatter everything. "If I agree," Seren said carefully, "what happens to the pups if you die? What happens to me?" "If I die, you'll have my protection in writing. The pups will be provided for. You'll have land, resources, independence." His jaw tightened. "But I don't intend to die. Not yet." Seren thought of Thistle, of bracken and fern, of little Moss who had been the first to trust her. "I agree to your terms," she said. Calder nodded once. "Then we have a bargain." He turned to walk back to the camp, then paused, half turning, his profile sharp against the moonlight. "Seren." It was the first time he'd spoken her name. "Yes?" "My wolves chose you," he said quietly. "I need to know why. But until I do understand this." His eyes met hers, and the emptiness in them was vast, terrifying, and lonely beyond measure. "I will never be one of your strays. I will never be something you save." He walked away before she could respond, and Seren stood alone by the river, heart pounding, a single thought echoing through her mind. "He's wrong. Whatever's dying inside him called out to me the moment he arrived. I just don't know if answering will save him or destroy us both." The capital city of Valthorn rose from the valley like a crown of stone and silver. Towers pierced the low-hanging clouds, their spires catching the weak afternoon light. The streets were packed with wolves in human form, merchants and nobles and common folk, all stopping to stare as the royal procession passed. Seren kept the wagon's canvas flap closed. She had no desire to be seen, but the whispers found her anyway. "Is that her? The wolfless one? Why would the king bring such a creature here? Look at all those pups. What is she? Some kind of beast mother?" She held Moss closer to her chest, the smallest pup whimpering at the noise and strange smells. "Shh," Seren murmured. "Almost there." The castle gates opened and the procession entered a courtyard larger than her entire village. Servants swarmed forward, guards barked orders, and somewhere in the chaos, the king dismounted and vanished into the palace without a backward glance. A woman in gray robes approached the wagon. "You are Seren?" She had silver hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "I am Marin, head of the king's household. You and your charges will follow me." The word charges carried a weight of skepticism. Seren climbed down, Moss still in her arms, and gestured for the guards to begin moving the other pups. The two who were old enough to walk on their own, Rowan and a fierce little female named Sorrel, stayed close to her legs, growling softly at anyone who approached too quickly. Marin's eyebrows rose. "They're protective of you." "They're frightened," Seren corrected. "This is all new to them." The east wing was grander than anything Seren had ever imagined. Vaulted ceilings, tapestries worth more than her father's entire estate, windows that let in cascades of natural light. Her quarters consisted of 6 interconnected rooms, a main chamber for her, a large nursery for the pups, a bathing room with heated water, a kitchen, a healing room stocked with herbs and medicines, and a small library. "His Majesty has spared no expense," Marin said, her tone carefully neutral. "You will have a staff of 8, including 2 healers who specialize in wolf pups. Meals will be brought 3 times daily. You are permitted to move freely within the east wing, but access to the rest of the castle requires an escort." A gilded cage, Seren thought, but a cage, nonetheless. "When will I see the king?" she asked. Marin's expression flickered. "His Majesty is not accessible. You will be summoned if and when he requires you. The door opened behind them, and a young woman swept in without knocking. She was beautiful in the way polished blades are beautiful, all sharp edges and gleaming surfaces. Her hair was copper red, her eyes golden, her bearing that of someone who had never been denied anything. So this is her, the woman said, circling Seren like a predator assessing prey. The wolfless wonder. Marin bowed stiffly. Lady Vivian, I wasn't informed you would be visiting. I go where I please. Vivian stopped directly in front of Seren. You don't look like much. Seren met her gaze without flinching. And you are? A flash of surprise, quickly masked. I am Lady Vivian Ashford, daughter of Lord Commander Ashford, future Queen of Valthorn. She smiled, and it didn't reach her eyes. Or I was, until the king decided to bring home a pet project. The implication landed like a slap. Future queen. This woman expected to marry Calder. And she saw Seren as a threat. I'm not here to be anyone's queen, Seren said carefully. I'm here to care for orphaned pups. Nothing more. Is that what he told you? Vivian laughed, the sound like breaking glass. The king doesn't do anything without reason. If he's brought you here, it's because you have something he wants. And when he's done with you, when he's extracted whatever use you have, he'll discard you like all the rest. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. I've seen it before. The women who think they can reach him, the healers who promise cures, the witches who offer magic. Her eyes glittered. They all end up the same way. Broken, banished, or buried. Marin stepped forward. Lady Vivian, I must ask you to leave. Guest. Vivian's lips curled. Is that what we're calling it? But she withdrew, sweeping toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. A word of advice, wolfless one. Whatever you think you sense in him, whatever hope you're clinging to, let it go. Calder of Valthorn has no heart left to give. His wolf saw to that. Her smile turned cruel. Ask anyone what happened to his mate. Ask what he did when she died. Then tell me if you still want to save him. She was gone before Seren could respond. Marin exhaled slowly. I apologize for that. Lady Vivian is persistent in her ambitions. His mate, Seren said quietly. The king had a mate? Marin's expression shuddered. That is not my story to tell. She left, and Seren stood alone in the grand chamber, haunted by words she couldn't ignore. What happened to his mate? What did he do when she died? She moved to the window looking out over the castle grounds. Below, she could see the king crossing a courtyard, flanked by advisors, his black coat stark against the gray stone. Even from this distance, she could feel it. That void, that silence, that terrible, aching absence where his wolf should be. It wasn't just dying, she realized. It was grieving. And whatever had broken inside him had happened long ago, long before she arrived, long before his wolves started bringing her their unwanted pups. But they had chosen her anyway. His wolves, the creatures who should have been extensions of his own soul, had looked at their dying king and decided that she, a wolfless outcast with nothing to offer, was the answer. Why? A soft whimper drew her attention. Thistle had woken and was padding toward her on unsteady legs. Seren knelt, gathering the pup into her arms. I don't know what I'm doing here, she whispered. I don't know what they want from me. I don't know how to save a king whose wolf has given up. Thistle licked her chin. And somewhere deep inside her, in that wordless place where wolves had always reached her, something stirred. A whisper. A pull. Find him, it seemed to say. Reach him, before it's too late. Seren closed her eyes. She had spent her whole life being told she was incomplete, broken, unworthy. But wolves had always known better. Wolves had always seen something in her that others couldn't. If the king's wolves believed she could save him, then maybe they were right. And if Lady Vivian was also right, if trying to reach him would break her, banish her, or bury her, Then at least she would have tried. She pressed a kiss to Thistle's head and made her choice. I will find out what happened to him. I will find out why his wolf is dying. And I will not let him push me away, no matter how cold he becomes. The wolves chose me, and I do not abandon what is mine. 3 days passed before Seren saw the king again. She spent the time settling the pups into their new home, learning the rhythms of the castle, and carefully avoiding Lady Vivienne. The staff assigned to her were efficient but distant, clearly unsure what to make of the wolfless woman their king had installed in the East Wing. Only one of them showed genuine warmth. Her name was Brinley, a young healer with kind brown eyes and a gift for calming frightened pups. She had arrived on the second morning and immediately knelt on the nursery floor, letting Moss climb into her lap. I raised 3 litters of my own before coming to the castle, Brinley explained. Lost my mate in the border wars. The pups are grown now, but I miss having little ones around. Seren liked her immediately. On the 3rd day, Marin appeared at her door with an expression that suggested bad news. You've been summoned to the Great Hall, she said. The king is holding court. He wishes to present you formally. Seren's stomach dropped. Present me? To the nobles, the pack leaders, the council. Marin's lips pressed thin. Lady Vivienne's father has demanded an explanation for your presence. The king has chosen to provide one publicly. A public spectacle. Seren would be displayed before the entire court, judged and whispered about, her wolfless status announced for all to hear. The dress was finer than anything Seren had ever worn. Deep green velvet that brought out the copper in her hair. Simple in cut, but clearly expensive. She stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. You're still wolfless, she reminded herself. No dress changes that. The great hall was enormous. Pillars of black stone rose to a vaulted ceiling painted with scenes of wolf hunts and ancient battles. Hundreds of nobles filled the space. At the far end, on a raised dais, sat the king. Calder wore black, as always. A crown of silver thorns rested on his dark hair, and his expression was carved from ice. Beside him, in a seat of honor, Lady Vivienne glittered in gold, her smile triumphant. Seren walked the length of the hall alone. Every step felt like a mile. Whispers rose around her like smoke. Wolfless, truly wolfless. The king has lost his mind. She reached the dais and dropped into a curtsy, her heart pounding so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. Rise, Calder commanded. She obeyed, lifting her chin, meeting his winter-gray eyes without flinching. Lords and ladies of Valthorn, the king said, his voice carrying through the hall. You have questions about the woman before you. I will answer them. Lord Commander Ashford, Vivienne's father, stepped forward. He was a massive man with a warrior's build and a politician's eyes. Your Majesty, with respect, this is unprecedented. A wolfless woman housed in the royal wing? The pack deserves an explanation. You're right, Calder said. They do. He stood, and the hall went silent. 3 months ago, my border patrol reported something unusual. Wild wolves were crossing into human territory, carrying pups, leaving them at a specific location. His gaze swept the crowd. These were not pack wolves. These were ferals. Creatures that answer to no alpha, follow no hierarchy, obey no commands. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Ah, and yet they were bringing their young to a single woman, a woman without a wolf of her own, a woman your elders cast out and left to die. His voice hardened. They chose her. The wildest, most untamable wolves in my kingdom looked at this woman and decided she was worthy of their trust. Lord Ashford's jaw tightened. Feral wolves are beasts. Their judgment means nothing. Does it? Calder descended the steps slowly. Because I've spent 7 years trying to understand why our packs are weakening, why fewer pups survive to shifting age, why our strongest wolves are dying before their time. He stopped in front of Seren, and in 3 months, This woman has raised more orphaned pups to health than our royal healers have managed in 3 years. The whispers changed tone. Confusion now, mixed with reluctant curiosity. She will remain in the castle under my protection, Calder continued. She will continue her work with the pups. And anyone who interferes with her, threatens her, or harms her in any way, will answer to me personally. His gaze found Lady Vivian, who had gone very pale. Do I make myself clear? The silence was absolute. Then, one by one, the nobles bowed their heads in acknowledgement. Lord Ashford was the last to submit. His bow was shallow, his expression murderous, but he bowed. Calder turned back to Seren. For just a moment, the ice in his eyes thawed. You may return to your quarters, he said quietly. Your pups are waiting. Seren curtsied again, her mind reeling. He had defended her, publicly, fiercely, without hesitation. Why? She walked back through the hall with her head high, and this time, the whispers had a different quality. Not just contempt now, fear. That night, Seren couldn't sleep. She sat in the nursery, surrounded by sleeping pups, replaying the scene in the great hall. A soft knock at the door made her jump. She opened it to find a servant holding a small wooden box. From His Majesty, the servant said, bowing, with instructions that you open it alone. Seren took the box and closed the door. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on black velvet, was a pendant. Silver, shaped like a wolf's paw print, with a single moonstone at its center. Simple, elegant, and clearly very old. Beneath it was a note in precise handwriting. This belonged to my mother. She believed that wolves could sense what humans cannot. She was right. Wear it or don't. But know that as long as you're under my roof, no one will touch you. Seren lifted the pendant, feeling its weight in her palm. The moonstone caught the candlelight. His mother's pendant. He had given her something that mattered. Why? She clasped it around her neck, feeling the cool silver settle against her collarbone. And somewhere in the castle, in chambers she had never seen, she could have sworn she felt something stir. A whisper of warmth in that vast, terrible void. Gone before she could be certain it was real. Weeks passed. Seren fell into a rhythm. Mornings were for feeding and health checks. Afternoons were for training, teaching the older ones to control their shifts. Evenings were for stories, for comfort, for helping the newest arrivals understand that they were safe. And the pups kept coming. 2 more in the first week. 3 the week after. Wolves she had never seen appearing at the castle gates at dawn, depositing their burdens and vanishing. By the end of the 2nd month, Seren was caring for 23 pups. This is unsustainable, Brinley said one evening, collapsing into a chair. We need more staff, more space. I know. Seren rubbed her temples. I'll request an audience with the king. But getting an audience proved impossible. Calder was always in meetings, always traveling, always occupied. Marin delivered polite refusals. The guards at his door turned her away. 2 weeks, 3. A full month without seeing him. And yet, gifts kept arriving. A set of healing texts from the Royal Library. A shipment of rare herbs. New blankets woven from the softest wool. Each accompanied by a note. For the pups. See, I'm told this remedy works well for fever. See, winter comes early this year. Keep them warm. See, he was thinking of them, of her. But he refused to see her. Then, on a night when the first snow was falling, everything changed. Seren woke to screaming, not human screaming, wolf screaming, the high, desperate sound of an animal in terrible pain. She was out of bed and running before she fully understood what was happening, following the sound through corridors she barely knew. The screaming led her to the West Wing, to the king's chambers. 2 guards blocked the door, their faces pale with fear. You can't go in, one said. His Majesty gave strict orders. Another scream tore through the air, and Seren felt it in her bones. Not just pain, grief, loss, the sound of something dying. That's his wolf, she breathed. His wolf is dying right now. It happens sometimes. The guard's voice shook. There's nothing anyone can do. Seren pushed past him. She heard shouting behind her, felt hands grabbing at her arms, but she was already through the door, already inside the king's private chambers, already seeing what no one was meant to see. Calder was on the floor. He was in his wolf form, or what remained of it. His shift was incomplete, frozen mid-transformation, fur and skin and something horrible in between. His body convulsed, his jaws open in a silent scream. 3 healers surrounded him, chanting, pressing herbs against his twisted form, doing nothing at all. Get out, Seren ordered them. They stared at her in disbelief. Now! Something in her voice made them obey. They fled. And suddenly she was alone with the dying king. Seren knelt beside him. Up close, the wrongness was even more apparent. His wolf wasn't just dying, it was fighting. Clawing at something invisible, thrashing against chains no one else could see. Calder, she whispered. Calder, listen to me. His wild eyes found hers. For a moment she saw him in there, the man beneath the beast, terrified, in agony, utterly alone. I'm here. She placed her hands on his twisted form, ignoring the heat, ignoring the wrongness. I'm here. You're not alone. He convulsed again, a howl tearing from his throat. And Seren did the only thing she knew how to do. She reached, not with her hands, not with words, with that nameless thing inside her, that broken place where her wolf should have been, that emptiness that had always drawn other wolves to her. She reached into his pain and wrapped herself around it. I'm here. You're not alone. I'm here. The convulsions slowed. His breathing changed, ragged gasps becoming something steadier. And then, impossibly, his form began to shift. Not forward into full wolf, but backward into man. Fur receding, bones reshaping until Calder lay on the cold stone floor, naked and trembling and completely human. His eyes opened. You, he breathed. Me. Seren was shaking too. What happened? What was that? He didn't answer. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Wonder, maybe. Or fear. You reached him, Calder whispered. My wolf. You reached him when no one else could. I don't understand what I did. You anchored him. Calder's hand came up, gripping her wrist with desperate strength. He was slipping away. Dying. And you pulled him back. Seren looked down at his hand on her wrist. His skin was warm now. Not cold. Warm. Your temperature, she said. You're warm. I know. His laugh was broken, almost a sob. I haven't been warm in 7 years. 7 years. Since his mate died. Since his wolf went silent. What happened to you? Seren asked softly. What happened to your mate? The warmth vanished from his eyes. His hand dropped from her wrist. The wall was back. The ice. The distance. You should go, he said. The healers will wonder. They can wonder? Seren didn't move. You just nearly died. I'm not leaving. That's not your decision. You made me your responsibility when you brought me here. Now you're mine too. The words hung between them, bold and impossible and true. Calder stared at her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, slowly, something in his expression shifted. Not a thaw, but a crack. The smallest fissure in his armor. Her name was Lyrian, he said quietly. Seren went very still. She was my mate, my heart, my everything. His voice was hollow. And I killed her. The confession dropped into the silence like a stone into deep water. Seren's mind raced. He killed his mate. That's why his wolf was dying. Grief wasn't destroying him. Guilt was. How? She asked gently. But the crack had closed. The ice had returned. Calder pushed himself to his feet, wrapping himself in a robe and distance. I'll leave, he said. Now. Calder. That is an order, Seren. His back was to her, his shoulders rigid. Go back to your pups. Forget what you saw here. Forget what I said. I can't forget. You can. You will. He turned and his eyes were winter again. Because if you don't, if you keep pushing, keep reaching, keep trying to save me, you will learn things you cannot survive knowing. He moved past her to the door, opening it, revealing the terrified guards clustered in the corridor. Escort her back to her quarters, he commanded, and ensure she stays there. Seren rose on unsteady legs. She walked to the door, pausing beside him. You're wrong, she said quietly. About what I can survive. She left before he could respond. But as the guards led her through the dark corridors, she couldn't stop thinking about what she had felt when she reached into his pain. His wolf hadn't been dying. It had been trapped, bound, chained by something. No, someone, and whoever had done it was still holding on. The next morning, Seren woke with a single purpose. She needed answers. The king had told her to forget. To stay in her quarters, care for her pups, pretend she hadn't seen what she saw. But forgetting was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt it again. That reaching, that connection. The sensation of something vast and desperate, clinging to her like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. His wolf was bound. She was certain of it now. But bound by what? By whom? And how did his mate's death connect to it? She needed to find someone who knew the history. Brinley. The healer was in the nursery when Seren found her, feeding a bottle to one of the newest arrivals, a tiny silver pup. I need to ask you something, Seren said. About the king's mate. Brinley's hand stilled. That's not a topic anyone discusses, Brinley said carefully. Not if they want to keep their position. Or their head. I'm not asking for gossip. I'm asking because I think it matters. Seren knelt beside her. Last night, the king's wolf nearly died. I reached him somehow, pulled him back. But what I felt. Brinley, his wolf isn't dying naturally. Something is holding it down, trapping it. Brinley's face went pale. She set the bottle aside. What I'm about to tell you could get us both killed, she whispered. You understand that? Yes. Brinley closed her eyes, gathering herself. The queen's name was Lyrian. She was beautiful, kind, beloved by everyone. She and Calder were true mates, the real kind, fated and bound from the moment they met. Her voice dropped lower, but not everyone was happy about the match. Lady Vivian's family? Among others. The Ashfords had been promised the throne for generations. When Calder chose Lyrian over Vivian, Lord Ashford was humiliated. He never forgave the slight. Seren's heart was pounding. What happened to her? She died in childbirth. The official story is that the labor was too difficult. The healers couldn't save her. And the baby died too. Brinley's jaw tightened. But there were rumors. Whispers that it wasn't natural. That someone had cursed her, poisoned her, and done something to ensure she wouldn't survive. Calder said he killed her? Brinley flinched. He blames himself because he wasn't there. He was away when she went into labor, dealing with a border conflict that Lord Ashford had reported. A conflict that turned out to be nothing. By the time Calder returned, Lyrian was dead, the baby was dead, and his wolf. She trailed off. His wolf felt her die. Seren finished, felt the bond snap. More than that. Brinley's eyes were haunted. They say he went mad with grief. Shifted and didn't shift back for weeks. Tore apart half the castle. And when he finally returned to human form, his wolf was silent. Not dead. Not gone. Just silent. Like something had bound it. Chained it to that moment of grief forever. Who was the healer? Seren asked. The one attending Lyrian when she died? Brinley hesitated. Brinley? Who? Lady Vivian's aunt, Brinley whispered. Margot Ashford. She was the royal healer then. She was banished afterward. supposedly for failing to save the queen, but she's still alive, living in the northern reaches, protected by Lord Ashford's money and influence. The pieces were falling into place, a false border conflict to draw the king away, an Ashford healer attending the birth. A death that conveniently removed the obstacle to Vivian's ambition. It was a trap, Seren breathed. They murdered her. You can't prove that. Brinley's voice was urgent. No one can. The Ashfords are too powerful. Even if you're right, there's nothing you can do. There's always something. She began carefully. Instead of asking direct questions, she listened. She made herself useful outside the nursery, building relationships with servants and guards. She learned which ones had been at the castle 7 years ago, which ones remembered the queen. A picture began to emerge. Lyrian had been loved, truly, genuinely loved by everyone she met, and she had been hated by the Ashfords. Lady Vivian used to follow her everywhere, one elderly maid confided, watching her, learning her routines. It was unsettling. The night she died, a guard told Seren quietly. I was stationed outside her chambers. I heard screaming. Not pain screaming, fear screaming, like she knew what was happening. Margot Ashford was the only one in the room, another servant whispered. She claimed the queen hemorrhaged, that there was nothing she could do. But when I cleaned the chambers afterward, there was barely any blood. Each story added a thread to the tapestry. Lyrian had been murdered, the baby too. And someone had used that moment, that shattering of the mate bond, to bind Calder's wolf in its grief forever. But why? The answer came from an unexpected source, Lady Vivian herself. They crossed paths in the gardens one evening. You've been busy, Vivian said, asking questions, talking to servants. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Seren met her gaze without flinching. I didn't particularly care if you did. Vivian laughed. You're either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both. You want to know what happened to the sainted queen. You think if you can figure it out, you can fix him. Can I? No. Vivian stopped in front of her. Because what's broken in him was broken deliberately, and the one who broke it has no intention of letting it heal. Seren's blood ran cold. You. My aunt is a healer living in comfortable retirement. Nothing more. But there was satisfaction in Vivian's eyes she couldn't hide. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. The king's wolf is bound to his grief. As long as that grief exists, as long as he blames himself for Lyrian's death, the binding holds. And do you know the beautiful part? Her smile was poison. He can never be free unless he lets her go. But letting her go means admitting she was murdered. Admitting he failed to protect her. Admitting that everything he's suffered for 7 years was caused by people he trusted. She stepped back, spreading her hands. He'll die before he admits that. His pride won't allow it. And I will have my throne, one way or another. Her eyes glittered. Either he marries me to secure his legacy, or he dies, and the council names my father regent. Either way, the Ashfords win. Seren's hands were shaking with rage. I won't let that happen. You won't let it? Vivian's laugh was bright with amusement. You're nobody. What could you possibly do? I pulled his wolf back from death when your binding nearly killed him. The amusement vanished from Vivian's face. Yes, Seren continued. I reached him. I anchored him. Whatever your family did to trap his wolf in grief, I broke through it. And I can do it again. For the first time, Vivian looked afraid. Stay away from him, she hissed. Stay away, or I will destroy you. Your pups, your staff, everyone you care about. I will burn it all to the ground. She swept away, her ladies-in-waiting scrambling to follow. And Seren stood alone in the darkening garden, heart pounding, mind racing. She had her answer now. She understood the trap, the binding, the terrible truth hidden for 7 years. But understanding wasn't enough. She needed to break it. And to do that, she needed the one thing the king had refused to give her. His trust. Seren found him on the battlements at midnight. The king stood alone, staring out at the darkness beyond the castle walls, his black coat whipping in the wind. Snow fell in soft spirals around him, catching in his dark hair. He didn't turn when she approached. "You should be sleeping," he said. "So should you." A ghost of amusement crossed his face. "I don't sleep much anymore." Seren moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel the warmth still radiating from his skin. That warmth hadn't faded since the night she'd reached his wolf. "I know what happened to Lyrian," she said. Calder went rigid. "I know she was murdered. I know the border conflict was a trap to draw you away. I know Margot Ashford was alone with her when she died. And I know the Ashfords have been waiting 7 years for you to either marry Vivian or die so they can claim the throne." The silence that followed was terrible. When Calder finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Who told you this?" "Everyone. No one. The pieces were all there, scattered across a dozen whispered conversations. Your people know the truth, Calder. They've always known. They're just too afraid to speak it." His hands gripped the stone railing, knuckles white. "You're wrong." "I'm not. You have to be." He turned to face her, his eyes wild, desperate. "Because if you're right, then I failed her. I let them take her from me. I let them—" His voice broke. Seren reached for him, placing her hand over his. "You didn't let them do anything. They deceived you. They planned this for months. Maybe years. You couldn't have known." "I should have known." The words tore out of him like a wound reopening. "I was her mate. Her alpha. I was supposed to protect her, and instead I rode off to chase shadows while they slaughtered her in our own bed. And your wolf has been punishing you ever since." Calder flinched as if she'd struck him. "That's why he went silent," Seren continued gently. "Not because the mate bond broke, because you blamed yourself so completely that he couldn't bear to feel what you were feeling. So he retreated. And someone used that grief, that guilt, to bind him there." "Bound." Calder's laugh was hollow. "You keep saying that word. Because it's true. I felt it when I reached him that night. Your wolf isn't dying of natural causes. He's trapped. Chained to the moment of Lyrian's death. Forced to relive that grief over and over. Because something is holding him back." She stepped closer, lifting her hand to his face. He flinched but didn't pull away. "Margot Ashford was a healer," Seren said quietly. "But she was also something else. Something your kingdom banned generations ago." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "A witch? A blood witch. The darkest kind. She used Lyrian's death, the breaking of your mate bond, to cast a binding on your wolf. As long as you blame yourself, as long as you carry that guilt, the binding holds." "Then it holds forever." Calder's voice was bleak. "Because I will never stop blaming myself. If I let go of that guilt, I let go of her." "No." Seren shook her head fiercely. "You let go of the lie. The guilt isn't love, Calder. It's a chain. Lyrian wouldn't want you bound by it. She would want you to live. You didn't know her. I don't have to. I know you." Her hand slid from his cheek to rest over his heart. "I know you've spent 7 years punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault. I know your wolf is dying because you won't let him grieve properly. Won't let him rage at the people who actually killed her." Calder was trembling now. "Let me help you," Seren whispered. "Let me reach him again. Let me show him that he's allowed to stop hurting." "You don't understand what you're asking." "Then show me." He stared at her for a long moment, snow falling between them, the wind howling around them. Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, the kiss of a man drowning and finding air for the first time in years. His hands tangled in her hair, and Seren felt the heat of him blazing against her skin. But beneath the heat, she felt something else. His wolf. Rising, reaching back. She gasped against his mouth, and Calder pulled back, his eyes wide with shock. "You felt that," he breathed. "Yes." Seren was trembling too now. He's there. He's trying to reach me. That's impossible. You're wolfless. You shouldn't be able to. I know what I shouldn't be able to do. She grabbed his hands, pressing them against her chest, over her own heart. I've been told my whole life what I can't do. But wolves have always trusted me. Your wolves have been bringing me their pups for months. And now your wolf is reaching for me when he won't reach for anyone else. She met his eyes, fierce and certain. Maybe I'm not wolfless. Maybe whatever is inside me is something different. Something that was always meant for this. For you. Calder stared at her. In the moonlight with snow in his hair, he looked young, vulnerable, terrified. If you try to break the binding, he said quietly, it will fight back. Margot's magic is old and strong. Then we'll fight back harder. You could die. I could. Seren lifted her chin. But I'd rather die trying to save you than live knowing I didn't try. Something broke in his expression. The last wall. The final defense. Why? He asked, his voice cracking. Why do you care what happens to me? Seren thought of all the reasons she could give. The pups who needed a stable kingdom. The wolves who had chosen her for this. But in the end, only one answer was true. Because somewhere along the way, she said softly, you became mine too. Calder closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. Then we do it together, he said. Whatever happens, whatever it costs. He took her hand. And somewhere in the darkness of the castle, in chambers sealed with blood magic and ancient hate, Lady Vivian Ashford received word that her carefully laid plans were about to unravel. She smiled and sent a raven north. They gathered at dawn. Seren had insisted on witnesses. If she was going to try to break a blood witch's curse, she wanted people who could testify to what happened. Brinley stood in one corner of the king's chambers, her face pale but determined. Marin stood beside her. 3 of Calder's most trusted guards formed a perimeter, wolves who had served his father before him. And on the floor, arranged in a circle around the space where Calder sat, were the pups. All 23 of them. This is madness, Marin said quietly. Bringing the pups into this. They need to be here. Seren knelt at the center of the circle, facing Calder. Whatever is inside me, whatever lets me reach wolves when I shouldn't be able to, it's connected to them. They strengthen it. Calder sat cross-legged on the stone floor, stripped to the waist, his skin pale in the morning light. The cold had returned to him overnight, worse than before, as if the binding had sensed what was coming. Tell me what to do, he said. Close your eyes. Seren placed her hands on his chest. Think about Lyrian. Not her death. Not the grief. Think about who she was. Think about why you loved her. That will strengthen the binding. No. The binding feeds on guilt and grief. Love is different. Love is what you've been denying yourself. It's the one thing Margot couldn't account for. Calder closed his eyes. Seren closed hers. And she reached. It was different this time. Deeper. Instead of just brushing against his wolf, she dove into the darkness where he was trapped. She felt the cold first, a frozen wasteland of guilt and self-hatred. Then she felt the chains. They were made of memory. Every link was a moment from that terrible day. The message about the border conflict. The ride through the mountains. The return to find chaos. The moment when the mate bond snapped and his wolf felt Lyrian die. Each memory was a weight, dragging his wolf deeper into the ice. But beneath the memories, she felt something else. Warmth. Faint and flickering. Show me, she thought. Show me who she really was. The memories shifted. Suddenly she was seeing through Calder's eyes, Lyrian laughing in the gardens, her dark hair streaming behind her as she ran. Lyrian holding a newborn pup with such tenderness it made Seren's heart ache. Lyrian reaching for him in the darkness, her voice whispering words of love. This was what the binding had tried to bury. Not the grief, but the joy. the truth that Lyrian had been more than just a victim. She was real, Seren told his wolf. She was loved. She was happy. And losing her was a tragedy, not a punishment. Something stirred in the frozen darkness. It wasn't your fault, Seren continued. You were deceived. You were betrayed. But you didn't fail her. The people who killed her failed her. And they've been hiding behind your guilt ever since. The stirring grew stronger. It's time to let go. Not of her. Never of her. But of the lie that you deserve this pain. Deep in the ice, something cracked. A howl rose from the darkness. Not a howl of grief this time. A howl of rage. Yes, Seren thought. Feel it. Feel the anger you've been burying for 7 years. The ice shattered. Seren was thrown backward as power erupted from Calder's chest. She hit the ground hard, gasping, and looked up to see something impossible. His wolf was emerging, not a partial shift. A full, complete, glorious wolf, massive and silver-white, his eyes blazing with fury that had been denied for far too long. He threw back his head and howled, and the sound shook the castle to its foundations. The pups answered him. 23 small voices raised in unison, a chorus of welcome and recognition. Their alpha was awake. Their alpha was free. And they were his pack, connected by bonds no blood magic could touch. Calder's wolf turned to look at Seren. For a moment she feared she'd made a terrible mistake, that his rage would consume everything. But then he padded toward her, his great silver head lowering, and pressed his muzzle against her palm. Thank you, she felt him say. Thank you for finding me in the dark. Tears streamed down Seren's face as she buried her fingers in his fur. Then the doors burst open. Lady Vivian stood in the entrance, flanked by her father's guards. Behind her, supported by 2 attendants, was an ancient woman with white hair and eyes that glittered with malice. Margot Ashford. Well, the old witch said, her voice like cracking ice. It seems the little wolfless girl has been busy. Calder's wolf spun, placing himself between Seren and the intruders, a snarl building in his throat. Don't bother. Margot raised one gnarled hand, and dark energy crackled between her fingers. My binding may be broken, but I still have power enough to end you both. Then my niece will finally have what was always meant to be hers. You murdered my mate. Calder's voice emerged from his wolf form, impossibly deep. You murdered my child. You've been torturing me for 7 years. And I would do it again. Margot's smile was cruel. The throne of Valthorn belongs to the Ashfords. It always has. She raised her hand higher, the dark energy building, and Seren stood. You're wrong about one thing, she said quietly. Margot's eyes narrowed. Oh? You called me wolfless. Seren walked forward, past Calder's protective bulk, toward the witch who had destroyed so many lives. My whole life, people have called me that. Broken, incomplete, wrong. The pups were standing now, forming ranks behind her. But wolves have never seen me that way. Wolves have always known what I am. Seren felt something rising inside her, something vast and ancient. I'm not wolfless. I'm something else entirely. She reached, not for Calder's wolf this time, for all of them, for the 23 pups who trusted her, for the wild wolves who had brought them to her door, for every wolf in Valthorn who had sensed her presence and felt drawn to her without understanding why. She reached, and they answered. Power surged through her like wildfire, not the power of a single wolf, but the power of a pack. Dozens of wolves, hundreds, maybe more, all lending her their strength. Margot's eyes went wide with terror. What are you? I'm a mother of wolves, Seren said. And she unleashed everything. The dark energy in Margot's hands dissolved like shadow before sunlight. The old witch screamed as the bindings and curses that had sustained her for decades shattered at once. She crumpled to the ground, suddenly ancient, suddenly powerless. Lady Vivian backed away, her beautiful face twisted with fear. Father's guards will do nothing. Marin stepped forward, and Seren saw that the 3 trusted guards had been joined by a dozen more. Lord Ashford has been arrested. His chambers contained evidence of every crime his family has committed. This isn't over, Vivian spat. Yes, Calder said, shifting back to human form, magnificent and furious and finally, free. It is. The guards seized Vivian and her aunt, and Seren stood in the center of it all, surrounded by pups and wolves, and the man whose life she had just saved. Calder came to her. He was warm now, truly warm. A permanent restoration. His wolf was whole inside him, and she could feel it, purring with satisfaction. You called yourself a mother of wolves, he said quietly. I did. Is that what you are? Seren considered the question. She thought about the wolves who had brought her their unwanted pups, about the wild, wordless thing inside her that had always drawn wolves to her side, about the power that had just connected her to every wolf in the kingdom. I don't know, she admitted, but whatever I am, I'm yours. Calder smiled. It was the first real smile she had ever seen on his face, and it transformed him completely. Then I suppose it's only fair, he said, that I'm yours too. He kissed her again, soft and sweet and full of promise. And around them, 23 pups began to howl with joy. 6 months later, the kingdom of Valthorn was transformed. The Ashfords had been stripped of their lands and titles. Lord Ashford had been executed for treason. Vivian had been exiled to a distant kingdom, and Margot, ancient and powerless, had died in her cell within weeks, her stolen life finally catching up with her. But the real change was harder to see. Wolves who had been abandoned began returning to the pack. Pups who would have died were thriving under Seren's guidance. And the Alpha King, once cold and broken, now walked through his castle with warmth in his eyes. Seren stood on the balcony of their shared chambers, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and rose, arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned back into Calder's warmth. The healers confirmed it today, she said softly. His arms tightened. Confirmed what? She took his hand and pressed it against her stomach. For a moment, he didn't understand. Then his breath caught. Seren. A pup of our own, she whispered, to raise alongside all the others. Calder spun her around, his eyes bright with tears and joy. You've given me everything, he said. My wolf, my kingdom, my heart, and now this. You gave me everything first. She touched his face. A home, a purpose, a place where being different wasn't a curse. It was never a curse. He kissed her forehead. It was a gift. The wolves knew it before anyone else. As if summoned, small feet pattered across the floor. Moss, the smallest of the original pups, now nearly grown, bounded onto the balcony. Other pups followed. Thistle, bracken, and fern, rowan, sorrel, and all the rest. 23 wolves, soon to be 24, gathered around the 2 people who had become their family. Calder knelt among them, and Seren watched as the Alpha King of Valthorn was swarmed by pups, their tongues lapping at his face. He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was rusty, unused, but it was real. Seren joined him on the ground, surrounded by wolves and warmth and love. She had been cast out for being different, told she was broken, left to die among the creatures the pack deemed worthless. Instead, she had built a family. She had found a mate. She had saved a king. And she had discovered that the thing everyone called her weakness was actually her greatest strength. I love you, Calder said, reaching for her hand. Seren laced her fingers through his, feeling his wolf brush against that wordless place inside her. I love you too, she said. And somewhere in the mountains beyond the castle, a wild wolf raised its head and howled. One by one, others joined. A chorus of voices singing for their mother of wolves, singing for their alpha, singing for the family that had risen from ashes. The song carried across the kingdom. And in her heart, Seren sang with them.